Hi, I'm Dr. Amir.
And I'm Dr. Virginia,
and we're the Double Doctors.
Thank you so much for joining. This is our inaugural episode. It's interesting that we're talking about coronavirus right now, COVID 19. But this is not something that we just started thinking about doing. We've actually been in preparation for doing this for a while. We're getting so many questions, and people are reaching out to us a lot. I think I get a text at least once a day and maybe an email here or two about what to do, how to stay safe, how to stay mentally healthy. So we thought we would go ahead and roll it out and talk about these things right now because there's not a lot of people that are talking about what we're talking about. So we want to make sure that you are in the know. So first, I'm going to start out by talking about the virology. And virology is what? What is virology?
Virology are the study of viruses.
Yeah, easy peasy. So this is not going to take too much of your history in terms of knowing about infectious disease or immunology, any of those things. This is going to be very basic and very straightforward, okay? I like taking things, and I have people tell me I have a very common sense approach to medicine, explaining things to patients. So the first part of the hope infusion that we want to talk about today as the Double Doctors is the fact that we have seen this before. I've told people, and I keep telling people, there's nothing new under the sun. This is not the first time we've seen SARS-CoV, which is why it's called SARS-CoV-2 and not CoV-1. We saw one in 2002, 2003, and people have actually been working on coronavirus, studying it, studying how the virus moves, again, virology, the study of the viruses, and studying things that might be helpful for it. Not just SARS, but some other things as well, MERS or Ebola virus even. So what is SARS and what are some of the symptoms? So SARS stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. Okay, that's caused by the coronavirus, which is where we get the COV from. Okay, that's actually the virus itself. So when you talk about COVID-19, that's actually the illness that we as humans get. Okay, so the first part of the hope that I want to tell people is that we have seen this before, and so that means that people have been studying this and working on this since 2002. Correct. Okay, and I'm going to let Dr. Amir talk about the other part because this gets a little wild for me. So where does SARS come from? Where did this, at least in this episode, this version?
So just so that we're clear, all of these strains commonly will occur in cattle, bats, cats, a couple other animals, but those are the primary reservoirs. And so with this particular strain of coronavirus, this new strain, it was found in the bat. So the coronavirus that we're dealing with now was 99% genetically similar to that of the bat that it was isolated from in Wuhan. But also we found that there was another animal that served as an intermediary between the bat and the human, and this animal had 99% similarity between the genetic coronavirus found in the bat, and this was the pangolin. Now, why is that of interest? Because the pangolin is a small anteater-like animal that is considered a delicacy. So this was an animal that was being sold for like $2,200 on the black market per pound. And so it was considered a delicacy. And so what we believe probably happened is that the bat may have defecated and transmitted the virus to the pangolin, and then the humans consumed the pangolin. And now we're dealing with this pandemic.
So here's the other part of the hope, which is that since we know where it came from, and we know how it acts, at least on an initial level, it is mutating and it is changing its characteristics. But we do know, again, that people have been studying certain things. There was a paper that came out in Nature by Wong and his associates, researchers, on February the 4th, and they looked at several different medicines. Antiviral medicines were some of them, antiretrovirals. Antiretrovirals are used to fight HIV. And the initial thought was that they were, the original researchers looked at, I think it was an HIV medicine, an antiretroviral, and what was the other medicine that they used? They flu, right? Wasn't it the anti-flu medicine? And they put it together. And they seemed to help out initially. But then you started seeing scientists say, well, you know what? This isn't a virus that works with the antiretroviral mechanism. In other words, the way it reproduces is not that way. So we should be looking at pure antivirals, which is interesting because the two medicines that they found, that Wong and his cohorts found, was that remdesivir, which is an antiviral, helped, and then chloroquine is actually an antimalarial. So where do we get that? Why is that helpful? We're not 100% sure, but we know that those are two of the medicines that we know seem to be helpful. And when you think about those two, remdesivir is actually not available here in the United States. Gilead created, the pharmaceutical company created, they've actually donated a lot of doses to China to help folks there. So thank you, Gilead, for doing that. But chloroquine is old as dirt. Well, not as old as dirt. It's 70 years old.
But it's fairly old.
It's old. We've
Right.
been using it for a long time. So the good news is that we have a medicine that actually has some street cred when you think
Right.
about it. It's been out for a long time. So we know that for the most part it's fairly safe in humans. Hopefully remdesivir is as well, but that's another little factoid, a little hope infusion right there. So
Yep. And so now we're going to move on to in this segment to hope infusion. Okay, we want to share a couple of stories of hope pertaining to this evening's talk.
yes, and the first one, I was really excited to see this a couple days ago. It was the first case of a woman of her age who had contracted coronavirus and survived. There is an 80-plus-year-old woman, I think 84, but 80-plus-year-old woman in Italy who was actually all over the news. There was a wonderful picture of her with her entire medical team, and you got to see her doing well. All of them were in their masks, of course, but they were doing well. She was doing well. Her team was very excited about the fact that she had contracted this and was much better. The initial hope that we had was that the virus was really only, could infect all kinds of different people. All of us, any of us could be carriers, meaning that you're doing okay. You don't look like you're sick, but you can make somebody else sick. Okay, and that's
Right.
one of the reasons that masks can actually be helpful, because if you're a carrier and you maybe are sneezing or coughing and you're walking around and you're, doing good, but then you can cough on somebody else who's immunocompromised and make them really sick. So originally we thought that regular old young people were carriers, and that they're really young, they're really old, and people with immunocompromisation, so people with maybe cancer, HIV, or some other kind of chronic medical condition, those were folks that were succumbing to the illness. Unfortunately, we recognize that, that there are some people who don't fall within that immunocompromised range, some younger folks who were succumbing to the illness. But this was the first big glimmer of hope, which was, even a person who was older or immunocompromised, they can beat this. There are some people in China right now who are beating this. There are some healthcare professionals who've acquired this and are beating this. So that is like, yay. And I heard you cough, but you have the corona, right? You
So
this
just
is within 6 feet, so.
Right. So if that's the case, you're in trouble, young
I'm
lady.
in trouble.
But the other story, the newest thing that we've seen in the last about there was a story that was recently put out concerning the FDA, which they have an ongoing set of treatments that they have started here recently. Okay, as of like around March 20th or so, and they published it on March 24th. But basically, what they were doing is that there were patients who have recovered from the coronavirus. And what they were able to do was they were able to extract, they were able to, for the ones who qualified to be blood donors, and so that's part of the key is you have to be able to qualify to donate blood. But these people who had recovered, they donated plasma. And of course, once you extract the plasma, from the plasma you can get antibodies, right? Antibodies that have been newly developed by your body to the coronavirus. Interestingly enough, they were able to take these antibodies, this plasma, and inject, these antibodies into people who were currently sick, hospitalized patients. And just a small sample size so far, but there are now patients who have recovered from these injections that they've received of the antibodies from someone else. So
I just want to do a happy dance.
yeah, this is a big deal.
That's a big deal.
Because
That's a big deal.
now what that means is that the people who are recovering from coronavirus, if they are able to donate blood, now you have the opportunity, if you're a coronavirus survivor, that you can save lives. Yes. By donating your plasma. So that's a big up, because we don't yet have a tried and true immunization vaccine for this coronavirus. But what we do now have is antibodies. So if you're sick, currently sick, you can receive plasma antibodies from someone else who's already been through what you're going through, and now we can see some lives get saved. And so this is a big deal.
It's an answer to prayer, I think.
Absolutely an answer of prayer.
Now, some things that are not an answer to prayer are some of the myths that we've seen out. So we're gonna debunk 3 myths right now, and before we end. So one of the first ones, which is that any hand sanitizer will do, okay, or that hand sanitizer is the best thing. It's actually not. Hand sanitizer is not the best thing. The best thing is washing your hands, okay? The absolute best thing is to make sure that you're washing your hands. Because washing your hands, you know, we have a little song that we sing with our son, top and bottom, in between, roll it all together, nice and clean, nice and clean. By the time we do that song, we've washed our hands for about 2 minutes, which is what you want to do. If it's got an antibacterial cleanser, that is the number one best way from a physical standpoint to protect yourself. If you have to use hand sanitizer, you're out and about, and you have to go grocery shopping, you're outside, you're doing that. I know some people do have to work outside of the home. We've got first responders, healthcare workers, thank you so much for what you're doing. Construction workers, I know some people are out and about. People that are delivering packages are out and about. So they don't have access to running water and soap. So those folks are needing hand sanitizer. Well, the hand sanitizer that definitely is the best. If you're making it from home, you really do need to start with 90% alcohol and then your aloe vera. Because then what you get is an alcohol base. You get a hand sanitizer that is at least 60% alcohol, and that's what you need. You need at least 60% alcohol. So if you're looking on the back of your hand sanitizers, make sure it has at least 60% alcohol. We actually found hand sanitizer, which was really good. I'm going to tell you something in a minute, but we actually found some really good hand sanitizer from Mom's Organic Market that had, I think it was 75% alcohol base in the hand sanitizer. It actually had essential oils. So that's another a neat little thing. As a sideline for that Mythbuster, some folks are wondering if certain essential oils and other things, natural remedies, can be helpful. Now, in and of themselves, I love natural remedies. We clean our house with things that, you know, no bleach and Lysol and all that stuff. We're using lots of things that are natural remedies and cleaners. But for this, what we will do is we'll go down first, you know, clean soil and debris, but then we're going down first with Lysol or bleach for things, and then coming back with that. So essential oils by themselves, yes, they can be antiviral, yes, they can be antibacterial. There are actually 3 that fit in both the antiviral and antibacterial category and have anti-anxiety properties. So those are ones that I recommend to my patients because of my mental health background. And that's peppermint, lemon, and lavender. Those have both of those properties. But I put them in hand sanitizer that's at least 60% alcohol. I'm not using them by themselves. I'm using them in combination. Okay, so just a little mini Mythbuster for that.
For the sake of this particular pandemic that we're facing, try to stick with your EPA approved agents. You can obviously come back over it with the things that smell great and have those, but for the sake of what we know for a fact has been studied, because clinical trials and scientific studies are what we do. You know, in God we trust. Everybody else
bring data.
Right?
That's
so we want to go with EPA approved agents. So we want to go with our Lysols, our bleaches, things of that nature, things that we know will kill for a fact the virus because it's been studied in a lab, and that's where people are putting their money for those studies. You know, there may be other agents, other things that could do it, but these are the things that people have invested their money to study, and so we know that these things work. So let's stick with those, so that we know for a fact that we're getting the full kill.
All right. There's another Mythbuster. I'm going to add it in because it's related to what you just said and related to some other things. Here's another Mythbuster. If I stay connected to my social media and connected to the news and connected to other things, I'm going to get the latest, most important information, the latest and greatest information, and I'm going to be in the know, and that's going to make things all better. That is a myth, and the reason is that you're going to get inundated with information, and unless you're getting it from the most credible resources like World Health Organization, CDC, NIH, unless you're getting it from those places, we're not 100% sure what you're getting. And even World Health Organization, there was a question we're going to have a little bit. They said one thing, and then a couple hours later sent a tweet out and said, well, we're not 100% sure. So even the most reputable organizations, we just may not know everything right now. Only God knows everything. So because of that, you kind of have to allow information to come into your e-gates and your eye-gates slowly, measured, okay? I don't watch the news. Just personally, I just don't. Because I get enough horror stories, unfortunately, when I'm working with some of my patients and the traumas that they've experienced. So I measure what I allow to come in. So a myth is to just sit there and stare at all the information and get it. You're going to get all the information, not in that FOMO. You're going to fight FOMO, fear of missing out. That's a myth. It's much better to allow yourself a short period of time, maybe once a day, where you're allowing yourself to go in, look at information, get this information, and then govern yourself accordingly. Just sitting there and binge watching the news is probably not a good idea. Yes, I know that there are stations that you can go to and binge watch all day long. Resist, okay? Resist the devil and he will flee.
Absolutely. And so another myth that we're seeing out here, there was a kind of a text message, Facebook message, different social medias where there was a message that information was being put out there that you could do small sips of water, and this would wash the coronavirus from the oral cavity down into the stomach, and then coronavirus would be killed by the stomach acid. Well, have anybody ever heard of a flu bug, a stomach bug of any type? Yeah, adenovirus, rhinovirus, all these. There's a lot of these viruses that can survive in the stomach. So it's a nice thought. It really is, but it's not accurate. And so just small sips of water as a coronavirus kill thing, nonsense. Drink water though. Drink water. Okay.
What about the fibrosis test and the holding of the breath?
Yeah. So here's another one. Another myth is that if you can hold your breath for a certain amount of time, 10, 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, yada, 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 that if you can hold your breath for this amount of time, then you effectively don't have fibrosis in your lungs. And that being portrayed as, the coronavirus is when it causes the acute respiratory distress syndrome, that in fact your lungs are being fibrosed. Let me just say no.
Just straight no.
No.
You're not even gonna give him a little bit of
no. Holding your breath, to induce coughing is used in cystic fibrosis, and that is to expel more mucus. But in terms of holding your breath to detect fibrosis of the lungs, no. That's why we have pulmonary function tests. If we could just do a breath hold technique, that would save millions and probably almost billions of dollars every year. If we could just do that and detect it, there would be a
pulmonologist would be
pulmonology. Yeah,
pulmonary text would
pretty much.
We don't want to do that.
Pretty much. I mean, it would be great to do that. Anybody would love to be worked out of a job if it meant patients got better. But the truth of the matter is you can't detect fibrosis of the lungs that way. Okay, there are pulmonary function tests for that. So as far as doing breath holds, that's not going to tell you whether you have fibrosis in your lungs or not. That's you going to the hospital, getting an X-ray, okay, meeting with a pulmonologist or a radiologist or someone of that nature to read that film, and also the pulmonary function test. Yeah. So please, when you get stuff like this, check it versus CDC, check versus NIH, places like that. Places that are reputable, places that are up to date on the science, because those are the places. So please don't take heed to those myths. That's not going to tell you one way or the other.
Now this last one is this is one of those things that it is going to be hard for any organization to put out a blanket statement, and it's the ibuprofen versus acetaminophen question, and we will try to explain to you why that's an issue. So again, for those who don't know, I'm Dr. Virginia and this is Dr. Amir. We're both physicians. We're both medical doctors. We've both been to medical school. We've actually given up at least 16 years of our lives apiece. So we've got at least 32 years of medical experience between the two of us. We may not look like it, but we do.
Right.
So this last one is really one of those things where we're saying, talk to your doctor. And you've seen this on every commercial that you've ever seen for direct-to-consumer advertising. This is a talk to your doctor kind of thing, okay? And it's really hard for, again, I mentioned earlier that the World Health Organization put out a statement and then they tweeted something that was slightly different, and that got picked up in the news. And this is the reason. There was a broadcast that kind of went out, and there's some other information that went out. I think there was a Minister of Health in France, I want to say, who basically said they were recommending against using ibuprofen in folks who had coronavirus because it seemed like those who were using ibuprofen were not doing as well. And so they basically said for anyone for fever and for other symptoms, they were going to use Tylenol. Now let's go back for a moment and get you understanding why we're even talking about ibuprofen and Tylenol in the first place. Well, this is SARS-CoV, severe acute respiratory syndrome. And so what are the symptoms? Well, a respiratory illness, usually if you've got some creeping crud and you've got a cough or cold or flu, you're going to have a couple things. You're going to have that cough and maybe sneezing. You may also develop a fever. You may also have, if it's getting into the severe area, it's going to be hard to breathe. You're going to have respiratory problems. You may even notice that you have nasal flaring, meaning that you're doing extra work, or your chest, you got some chest discomfort or tightness, and then maybe even around your lips it's starting to turn blue. If you're in that place, this is a 911 call. This is you need to go immediately to urgent care. But if you're feeling really bad and you've got all of these respiratory symptoms minus the flaring and the blue lips, and you're thinking, oh gosh, I've also got a fever, I gotta get my fever down, you're gonna take an antipyretic, which means anti-pyro, fire, something that's gonna bring the fever down. Both ibuprofen and Tylenol can do that, right? And when we talk about ibuprofen, that includes the brand names of Advil and Motrin. We talk about acetaminophen, those are the brand names of Tylenol. Am I missing another one over there? Acetaminophen basically is Tylenol. I think paracetamol is in there as well. Now these things are bringing your fever down, and so up until now there's really been no choice or no concern about which one you chose to use. And then there came out this idea that maybe the ibuprofen is making people worse, so don't take ibuprofen, only take Tylenol. And normally, I mean, if you don't have stock in the pharmaceutical company, who cares? Like, try what you want. Doesn't matter. But here's why it's so important that you talk with your doctor. And why I think that these large organizations are having a hard time laying out a blanket statement. You are an individual. Your body has individual responses. Your liver and your kidney are responsible for breaking down all of these medicines, some more than others. The Tylenol the kidney is very sensitive to ibuprofen, and the liver is very sensitive to Tylenol. So let's think about it this way. If you have liver disease, you don't want to take Tylenol.
Right.
So you need to talk to your doctor and find out what's best for you. If you have kidney disease, you probably want to stay away from ibuprofen if you've got severe kidney disease. If you've got severe kidney problems, end-stage renal disease, you already know. There are certain things that you shouldn't take. We do think, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but my thought is that if you're taking the ibuprofen and you're taking mega doses, or you're already having a hard time, the coronavirus is already starting to shut down organs, and it's attacking that kidney, well, if your kidney can't do what it needs to do, you got a lot of stuff spilling out of the blood. You got a lot of things that it can't metabolize, it can't break down. So that might be why they're seeing extra ibuprofen that's stuck in the body. And the coronavirus, if it's doing a bigger deal on the kidney than on the liver. Again, if you got liver problems, I don't know, if I have major liver issues, if I've got hep C, and I've got only half a liver, or I've already had a liver transplant, I'm not taking Tylenol, right? I'm going to have to do what? Talk to my doctor.
Yep. And that ultimately, that's what you're going to want to do, because everybody's picture is slightly different.
Slightly different. Okay. So I talked a lot on that one, but that was my little pet peeve when I saw that one. And when I heard it, because I understand the heart of the doctors that are saying that, because that came from apparently from some physicians. And I do get the idea of that. But I also want to make sure that we're not just doing a knee jerk and just saying, oh, well, I can take Tylenol and you have liver disease. No, you can't. What you need to do is call your doctor and ask your doctor what you need to do about this. And last but not least, because I'm a psychiatrist, I'm a mental health person, you heard all the research stuff from Dr. Amir. He's the researcher extraordinaire, the cancer researcher extraordinaire. I have to put a plug in from a mental health perspective. I've asked mental health folks, and I've said this in a couple other areas, and there's going to be a separate talk specifically on mental health. But what I do want to make sure that you understand is if you have a pre-existing mental health diagnosis, you need to check in with your primary care doctor and or your mental health providers. Just let them know how you're doing. Okay?
Absolutely.
Your psychiatrist, therapist, pastoral counselor, whoever it is that you are normally talking to about how you're doing from a mental health standpoint. If you already have an illness, go and see them. If you're on the fence and you're like, I was diagnosed way a long time ago, I don't have any issues going on right now, but some anxiety is building, or I've been more recently diagnosed, you need to see someone. Notice I didn't say see a prescriber, because it's not about that. I said see someone.
Right.
and that someone takes on a very broad, very, very broad connotation. So whoever it is that you feel is going to support you at this time, because you need some support. Okay, and that's the bottom line. That's it. I'm done. I'm about to take my coat off.
I think that is all we have for you today. We really thank you for tuning in. Hope that this is useful to you. And also hope that you've been infused with hope. That you will move forward with some confidence, knowing that this too shall pass. We're going to get through this together.
Exactly. All right. Until next time, you guys have a very blessed day on purpose.
Goodbye.